Community participation, I think, is the key to successful infill growth and development in an existing community, particularly one with historical heritage, the way Happy Valley has.
As soon as we found Fairhaven and Happy Valley, we just felt like this was the neighborhood for us.
I went to preschool across the street. I went to elementary school like 6 blocks away. It's a 15-minute walk to my middle school and a 10-minute walk to my high school.
I haven't found a single person that is not happy living here. It sounds cheesy, especially having a Happy Valley name.
This community has been so supportive of me as a single mom.
When I think of my neighbors, I think of folks aiding each other with the little things and being there for each other with the big things.
I think our neighbors are progressive. I think our neighbors are thoughtful. I think our neighbors care very much about the environment, and that's reflected in the neighborhood organization.
I always know that people will help if they can.
When community comes together to celebrate why we love Happy Valley, we love the historic context, we love the existing trees, we love the variety of architectural styles, we love the fact that we've got older people, young families, grandmas, single people living by themselves, single moms, single dads for that matter. When they come together and find agreement through shared ideas on what they like their community now and what they would like to see that community become, that kind of solidarity of community is a wonderful vehicle to go to the city of Bellingham, to go to the planning department and say, this is the vision that we share for the future of our neighborhood. And we were willing to work with the city, to work with our constituents in our community, to build an agreement that will see our vision for our own neighborhood move forward.
I find for myself that being a part of community, feeling connected, is crucial to my happiness.
There's a focus on this community and transforming it to reach some of its potential at least, and I think part of that's already been unlocked because I've had such a great experience here.
I think if we have a good, healthy population here, a variety of ages, people of different backgrounds, I think that really adds to the vitality of the neighborhood. So I'm all for that, trying to improve, increase the diversity. People of different backgrounds, people of different ages, with and without kids. I think the more of that diversity, the stronger this community is.
A lot of this has to do with appropriate urban design, and of course the smaller you get, the cheaper it is as well. You're just using a lot less resources, fewer materials. Construction costs are a lot less as well. So part of this is getting towards a diversity that meets the housing needs for all sorts of people.
Social scientists are telling us that you live longer the more social contacts you have. You're healthier emotionally, psychologically, the more interface you have with your environment, and not just the trees and the birds and like that, but the people who live next door, the clerk at the store that you get to know because you're there regularly. All of this has to do with a healthier, more community-minded lifestyle.
I'd like to see us find ways to be able to house people of moderate means in a housing situation that they can afford, where they can afford to be an owner and not have to be a tenant let's say always moving around, every year or so the rent changes, the landlord changes, boom, they're out, the kid might have to change school. I think that's a negative recipe. I think a better approach is to find ways for people of a variety of means to be able to live in the same neighborhood. So affordability to me is a really crucial issue.
Housing affordability is a crisis. Seattle is dealing with it as a crisis, where rents are starting to push up to averaging $4,000 a month, and Bellingham is not that much, behind that. We've been experiencing increases of 5%, 10%, 12% a year in the cost of rentals and housing. Okay, it's getting a lot more expensive. The percentage of folks that are living in what the city and the federal government would consider stressed, in terms of 30% of their income going into housing, more and more of those folks are devoting 50% of their income or higher into housing. It doesn't really leave a lot for all of our other needs. More generally, affordability for all is, I think, the challenge that we have ahead of us. So, for example, rent control in the East Coast cities, a tool that had been used for many years. Most property owners don't like that. It's a great way to preserve rents. We don't see rent control here on the West Coast, but we're seeing some alternatives, like the emergence of the Coastal Land Trust. It's a really great model if you can accept that housing isn't for just appreciation and capital accumulation.
Another aspect that I think is maybe a little bit tricky and problematic for Happy Valley is making sure that it's affordable.
So we have to also protect ourselves from allowing gentrification to undo the really important qualities that do exist in all of our neighborhoods as well. And that's a little tougher because you're dealing with economic forces that are frankly, beyond the control of regulatory agencies, the government, and of the neighborhoods themselves.
There's probably fears that a lot of people might have, or concerns about closer proximity or more affordability might have an adverse impact on their own way of life, their own fortunes.
Much of this has to do with perception, and the perception about greater density equates to deterioration of neighborhoods. It's actually quite founded as a result of some relatively bad development with higher density that was starting to be introduced around the 1970s and 1980s. And to accept that we are going through a process of change, that urbanization and density can be seen as positive if it's done right through really good urban design. And I think what we should all be, as a community, pushing for is the best quality design that's achievable.
The more houses that have come in, the more fun, really, that we've seen on the street.
When I find people who are involved, it always adds immeasurably to the quality of the outcome.
So I think that education is really important. I think we ought to be able to listen to one another and figure out what those concerns are and try and address concerns while we take steps toward the future.
Making the urbanization work, the density work in a sustainable way is more of a challenge. And I think Bellingham is one of the more progressive cities in the state. And we've got some really good examples of how introducing density in a sustainable way is resulting in greater acceptance, not just by neighborhoods and citizens, but also by the banking sector that is financing these kind of developments, and the city in terms of their regulations as well.
I think as Happy Valley moves forward, There will be infill in the form of ADUs, attached or detached dwelling units, accessory dwelling units, that will allow a single family lot to have a cottage for grandma or a rental for a student. It will allow people with a larger piece of property, perhaps that until recently had livestock on it or an orchard or something, to welcome a series, 6, 8, a dozen small houses or middle-sized houses that will fit in character to the community. I think critical to that is that we not lose ourselves to the suburban game where every new development is inward looking. We have to remember that Happy Valley is a context. It has a grid and a series of streets which want to celebrate the fronts of houses, not the garages of houses, wants to celebrate eyes on the street for security, wants to enjoy the presence of front porches so you can greet your neighbor as they go by. And this can be done in single-family detached houses, small ones, middle-sized ones. It can also be done in multifamily dwellings, where the dwellings themselves, if carefully designed, don't look like a fourplex or a sixplex. There's such opportunity here in Happy Valley to see growth that is contextual.